She came marching down the gravel path like she owned the whole valley, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other. "You can't be here," she snapped, before I even said a word. "This cabin is private HOA property, and I'm calling the authorities." I stood there in disbelief, watching this woman who didn't know me, didn't ask questions, didn't care threaten to call 911 just because I unlocked the front door of my own family's lake cabin. But what she didn't realize was the part that would change everything. My family built this entire valley decades before the HOA ever existed. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. I'd come back to the cabin for the first time in years to do some repairs and reconnect with the land my grandfather had carved from nothing. The same cabin he'd built with his own hands, surrounded by trails he cleared and a lake he helped stock. But now, standing face to face with a woman more interested in rules than respect, I realized this visit wasn't going to be quiet after all. She kept talking, loud and proud, into her phone claiming I was trespassing, that I was refusing to leave, that she was just doing her duty. I let her talk. Because I knew something she didn't. Not only did I belong there, had the history, the documents, and the legacy to prove it. She was about to learn that this land told a story. And it started with my last name. She circled the cabin like she was inspecting a crime scene, snapping pictures and muttering things about unauthorized structures and community violation codes. I leaned against the porch rail, watching her with a calm I didn't really feel. This wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about pride, about people forgetting where things come from, man who made them possible. This valley didn't spring up overnight. My grandfather helped clear these woods, pour the first foundation, and set up water roots when there was nothing here but rock and pine. And now, some HOA volunteer with a clipboard thought she had the final say. I hadn't been back in a while not. Since my father passed, life got busy, and the cabin sat quiet for years. But the land never left us. It was in our blood. When I found the old key again and decided to visit, I didn't expect any drama. I figured I'd check on the place, maybe fix the roof and sit on the porch like Dad used to. But the second I parked, she was already watching. She didn't ask who I was or why I was here. Just assumed I didn't belong. I walked inside, letting the creaky screen door slap behind me. Dust floated through the beams of light. Old photos still hung on the wall, my grandfather fishing with the original Valley crew. A picture of the ribbon cutting when the cabins first opened. Proof everywhere. But outside, she was already on the phone with 911. From inside the cabin, I could hear her voice getting louder. "Yes, dispatch. I have someone trespassing in one of our lake cabins, refusing to leave. No, I don't have their name, but I've never seen them before." I shook my head, half in disbelief. She hadn't even bothered to knock or ask who I was, just made assumptions and acted on them like she'd done this before. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about me. She'd probably pulled this act on others too. I glanced at the framed map hanging near the fireplace. A hand-drawn layout of the original valley from the 1950s. Each cabin was marked with initials. Ours had a bold R in the corner, Riverton, my family's name. My grandfather's cabin was the first structure built before the Homeowners Association even existed. Back then, there weren't rules or violations. Just neighbors helping each other clear brush and raise roofs. Outside, I noticed a few residents had started to gather near the edge of the gravel path. Some recognized me saw it in their faces. Mr. Tompkins from across the lake, and Martha, who used to bring over pies when I was a kid. But they stayed silent. It was clear they didn't want to get on this woman's bad side. That's when I realized her influence ran deeper than I thought. The real problem wasn't just the HOA policies. It was how she used them to intimidate, to control, and to rewrite the very history this valley was built on. The sheriff's truck rolled up slower than I expected. its tires crunching over the gravel like thunder in the quiet. Karen straightened up like she was reporting for duty, waving him down before he even stepped out. "There he is," she said, pointing toward the cabin. "He broke in, refuses to leave, and I think he's been staying here without permission." The sheriff glanced at her, then looked at me. His eyes squinted for a moment before he said, "You're Robert Riverton's boy, ain't you?" I nodded. His tone didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Karen froze for a second. "Wait, you know him?" she asked, her voice suddenly unsure. "I grew up coming here," I said, stepping down from the porch. "My family built that cabin. My grandfather helped design the original trail layout for this whole valley. We owned this land before there was even a homeowners association." Karen's expression shifted fast. "But the HOA has oversight now," she insisted, her voice raising again. "All cabins fall under community code. You can't just come back and take over a property that's been sitting vacant. We've had meetings, plans. There's a process." "That process never included erasing history," I replied calmly, holding up an old deed from my bag. "And this cabin was never abandoned. It was waiting." The sheriff raised a hand gently, asking for the paperwork. Karen's eyes darted to the growing crowd behind us residents, quietly watching phones. Out, waiting for what came next. The sheriff flipped through the old deed carefully, nodding slowly. Karen hovered behind him, arms crossed, clearly waiting for him to say something that backed her up. But just as he looked like he might hand the papers back, she blurted, "That doesn't matter. The HOA board already voted to repurpose that cabin as a community rental. It was on last month's agenda. He's too late." My stomach tightened. Repurpose. Now no one had notified my family. I looked at the sheriff, and even he seemed caught off guard. "That cabin was never listed as available," I said firmly. "We've paid the land tax every year. I have the bank records to prove it." Karen fumbled for her phone and scrolled through a few files. The board filed a claim that it was unclaimed property, vacant for over 5 years, eligible for reassignment under Article 7. She held up her screen like it was final. That's when the second twist hit. From the back of the crowd, Martha stepped forward. "That's not true," she said, voice steady. "I've been checking on that cabin every year, watering the flowers, keeping the porch clear. I left my name in the guest book inside." She turned to me. "It's still there, isn't it?" I nodded slowly. "Right next to the one my father signed the year before he passed." Karen's face dropped. The crowd started murmuring now. This wasn't just about a cabin anymore. It was about something much bigger, someone trying to rewrite the rules to serve themselves. The sheriff looked from Martha to Karen, then back down at the deed in his hands. "If what you're saying is true," he said to Karen, "then there should be a legal file from the county verifying abandonment." "Did the HOA submit that paperwork?" Karen's lips parted, but nothing came out. She glanced at her phone, fingers trembling now, pretending to scroll. "We were in the process of filing it," she muttered. The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "So you made a decision without completing the legal process? Tried to evict a rightful property owner with no proof?" The crowd behind us was dead silent. You could feel the weight of it all settling in. Karen, once so sure of her authority, now stood completely exposed. The sheriff turned to me and handed the deed back. "You're not just allowed to be here, you've got more right than anyone." Karen opened her mouth one last time, but before she could speak, another voice called out from the group. "You might want to check the HOA budget reports too," Mr. Tompkins said. Last month, Karen approved funds for cabin renovations on this one, even though it wasn't hers to touch. The sheriff scribbled something in his notepad. Karen's face went pale. The tension broke all at once as people began murmuring, some in support, others shaking their heads. I turned back toward the cabin, heart pounding, the legacy of my family finally restored. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just the end. It was the beginning of something new. Karen didn't say another word. The sheriff made a quiet call on his radio, and before long, she was walking back down the gravel path alone, her clipboard tucked tight against her chest like a shield. No more shouting, no more threats, just silence. The same kind she'd forced onto so many people here for years. Once she was gone, the mood shifted. Neighbors I hadn't seen in years came up one by one, more offering smiles, hugs, and memories of my dad and grandfather. Martha handed me a small keychain she said she found in the flower bed last spring. It was old and rusted, but I recognized it right away. My grandfather used to keep it on his belts, said it was for the shed though. I never saw what was inside. I turned it over in my palm and smiled. Over the next few days, word spread. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Karen resigned before it started. The sheriff quietly opened a deeper review into the HOA's financial records, and the community finally began asking questions they should have asked a long time ago. As for the cabin, I stayed, cleaned the porch, repaired the roof, hung a new sign that read Riverton Cabin, the same name carved into the valley's earliest maps. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. This wasn't just about a cabin on a lake.